Hi, and thank you for joining us here at Tax Talk UK, where we talk about all things tax and consider other important aspects of working for yourself, being self-employed, running a small business. So today I'm going to talk about providing staff parties. Before I do that, if I could please ask you to take a moment to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That way you'll easily be able to refer back to this information if you should need to, as well as being able to access other information that we have available on a whole host of different topics, all aimed at supporting you in your self-employment. You can find the topics loosely catalogued in the playlist section of our YouTube channel to try to help you to find the information that's going to be relevant to you more easily. And if you do find the information that we provide helpful, please do take a moment to like the videos that you watch to help us understand which content people are finding the most useful. So back then to staff parties. So we have been asked several times if providing a staff party is allowable for tax purposes, and whether there will be any tax implication for the employees. So the first thing to say is, of course, if you are trading as a micro entity limited company, and you potentially are an employee of your own company as well as the owner. But back to specifically staff parties. So the answer is yes, you are able to provide parties for your staff, and as long as they meet the criteria, they will be exempt for tax purposes for your employees. Now, one of the exemptions is that one of the conditions for exemption is that the party or event, it doesn't specifically need to be a party, must cost under £150 per head. And one thing that's important to note here is that the £150 isn't an allowance. That is the terms of the exemption. So if the event cost £180 per person, then that would not be an exempt event, and the whole £180 would be treated as a benefit in kind. Now, when you're calculating the cost per head, then you would just look at the total amount of the event or party and divide that by the number of people attending. So it's important also to note that if the event and the cost of the event does not meet the exemption and does not count as an event that doesn't need to be reported, then your employee must report and pay tax and national insurance, not only on the amount for their head, but if they brought guests from their family or household, they will also be liable for the cost for their head as well, if that is clear. But as long as the event is under 150, the other criteria is that it needs to be open to all staff. So if, for example, you had an event that was only for directors, for example, then that wouldn't be open to all staff generally. So therefore, that wouldn't meet the conditions, and that wouldn't be an allowable amount, and it would have to be reported as a benefit in kind. It doesn't matter if not all of the staff attend, it just needs to be open to all the staff. So if it happened that an event was open to all staff, but it just so happened that only the directors took up the event, then that was because it was open to them, it still would be it still would meet the criteria. It also needs to be an annual event. So if you sort of just had we're going to have a one-off sort of like event for our staff, then that wouldn't meet the criteria, and the cost would need to be reported as a benefit in kind. Generally, people think about Christmas parties or events, but it could be an annual summer barbecue, and actually the £150 is for the year. So if you had a Christmas event and a summer event, and they were £75 a head each, then you could have both of these events, and neither of the events would be reported as a benefit in kind, as long as it meets all of the criteria. So just some extra things to note on this: if the event is a virtual event, then that still counts. If the company has several locations, and they have different events per location, then that is still acceptable. So in terms of the event being available and open to all staff, if you had 2 locations, for example, then as long as if in one of the location, as long as that was available to all employees in that location, then that would be fine. It doesn't matter if the other location have a different event and they're sort of done separately, because that obviously would not be necessarily practical to have them all together. So just to recap then, because it can seem quite complicated until you get your head around it, like most things related to tax. So to be able to provide an event and or party to your employees without them having to have that reported as a benefit in kind, and for it to be allowable for the company's tax purposes, it needs to be an annual event. It needs to be open to all employees in each location. It needs to the cost needs to be less than £150 per head. And don't forget, that's not an allowance. So if it's over £150 a head, the whole cost becomes a benefit in kind. And if you have more than one event in the year, then as long as the £150 is not exceeded across them, then it doesn't need to be in one event. So hopefully this helps. And thank you very much for watching, and please do remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you. Goodbye.